Hey friends, it's Melissa Murrow with Vintage Bee Design, and today we're going to do some DIYs using hands. I actually made chili this week. It's been very cold, and I was quick to tell John and Sue, don't throw those away. I'm going to do a craft project this week with them. So basically, I'm using the leftovers from the chili that I made this week. I'll have 4 different projects using these cans. I will have 2 using the large cans that I used for sauce and 2 of the medium cans that were the kidney bean cans. I actually have another small one, but I haven't finished that project, so that'll have to be in a future video. And while I know that we did trays last week, I'm going to just do a different variation this week because I've got to get it done for market. So I'm going to do this silver tray as well. All of the projects have gotten 2 coats of paint, either with Dixie Belle or with DIY paint. During our Thursday night whatnot shows, we sell a lot of different papers that are great for scrapbooking or decoupage, junk journaling, whatever you want to do. And this happens to be one of the sets that I love, which is a bunch of kitties. And, kitties, springtime, they go together for me. Okay, let's face it, cats go together all times. So I'm just kind of going through this pack and deciding I'm definitely going to decoupage a couple of the papers on some of these projects. So just kind of deciding at first what specifically I want to use. They are not going to go around the can fully, as you can see, it's not long enough. So I'm just going to kind of work on how I'm going to treat this. I am going to use a wet paintbrush to moisten the paper, and that will make it easier to tear off in funky little strips with jagged edges. I don't like the crisp look when I have raw edges. So basically I'm just using the paint, or excuse me, the water to soften the paper so that it's easier to tear. Because this is paper and not heavy cardstock or mulberry paper, I can get away with using a top coat as my decoupage medium. And today I'm choosing Dixie Belle in the matte or flat sheen. I find it easier when I'm working with paper for some reason to go ahead and put the decoupage medium, in this case again the Dixie Belle, onto the paper and then adhere that to the piece. Especially with these ridges and stuff like that, it's just easier to apply it that way versus putting it on the piece and then adding the decoupage. Once I have everything attached, I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's down on all those ridges. I'm going to add some additional top coat to the edges to make sure it's stuck down really well. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a coat over the paper. Now, if I were doing a napkin, I probably would wait until it was actually adhered and somewhat dried before I did a coat over the top, or you will risk tearing the napkin. I got these really cool frames from Jackie over at ruthandruby.com. I love them. I think they're so adorable, and they were fantastic for Christmas time. But I want to show that these are not only good for Christmas time, they're good for year round. Now, I actually have on my Christmas tree pet portraits of all of my pets of all years past hanging as ornaments. And so that's a great thing you can use for this. I'm kind of going off of that idea on this, but I'm making spring decor, not a memorial to a kitty. These are my kitty decoupage papers, again, that we saw and whatnot on Thursday nights. You just never know what's going to happen on our DIY night on Thursday. So same technique, I'm just decoupaging the papers right on. I happen to have some of these little birdhouses from when we used to sell Dixie Belle and other paint lines, and when we used to use them for color samples. Now, I picked these up, I think, at Michael's. They probably sell them everywhere, to be honest. And I don't want it to just look like a plain old birdhouse, though I do think the color matches really nicely. This is actually the leftover paper from the cat portrait that I just put on the one ornament, and I'm just going to fold it around the top just to figure out exactly how I want it shaped. Then I'll trim it and decoupage it on. So I am going to apologize for my lunch being in the frame of this. I was kind of multitasking. Here I have just found another part of the paper that I really like, and it has a little bird on it in the same sort of tealish blue in the background. I am using the decoupage medium from Dixie Belle, the top coat, and I am just going to go ahead and center this on the ornament and then rub it down and leave it to dry. I always feel like I have a huge selection of napkins, which makes decoupaging great. If you are using multi-ply, napkins, which most people do, then you need to be sure to take off the plies so you're down to the single ply. In this case, I'm using the water technique again to get these raw edges to be a little bit torn. And I'm actually going to use both of the strips of this on my can because just like the paper, it did not go all the way around. But in this case, I do want it to be all the way around. I'm going to use the same technique, except for I am not going to put the medium on the napkin because it's so lightweight. So here instead, what I'm doing is just sort of lining it up on the can and working it in strips. If you add too much medium or you're too rough with it, then you will tear the napkin. They are very thin and fragile. I think this is why a lot of people use saran wrap to put it down so it can't get caught on their fingertips. I've never tried that technique, but it's probably one I should try eventually. Now, here's the secret sauce, as you will. I'm going to go ahead and for the next layer, rather than just filling up the blank area on the back of the can, I'm actually going to find the repeat part of the pattern and line it up there so that you won't ever see a seam anywhere on the can when you are done. As a matter of fact, I did eventually figure out when I was looking at the pictures very closely that I ended up putting a seam right on the front of it, but you really can't tell unless you're looking really closely. And so for this next can, I am taking some pages that I have ripped out from an encyclopedia. I've taken off the borders and I'm just going to tear them into small strips. And then I'm going to use the same medium I have been using and I am going to decoupage them onto the can. Now you'll notice on this one in particular, I have painted it a light color, and that's because the paper that I'm using is a light color. I want to be sure there is a light background so that there's no discoloration in the design. Now, while all of that is drying, I'm going to go ahead and my kitty papers have dried. I'm just going to use some 220 grit sandpaper and I'm going to start sanding this paper off. It is important when you sand to just do downward strokes, not up and down strokes. Otherwise, you may actually lift the decoupage paper off of the item that you're applying it to. So try to do downward strokes. Sometimes the back and forth is okay, but do not do up and down or you will likely just rip it up. Now, if you do find that any has lifted, go ahead and use your finger, brush, and just add a little bit more decoupage medium to secure the edges and set it aside so it can dry. Now for the frames, they are completely dry and I'm ready to adhere the top to the bases. And with this, I am using some Tight Bond glue. This is wood glue. And I just try to do it in very thin strips all the way around. And I'm just going to squeeze it closed. These are going to secure together pretty tightly. If you have a thicker paper or cardstock, something like that, you may want to use some small clamps. But honestly, these are going to stay together just fine. Now, I do have some Tite Bond clear glue somewhere, but I didn't happen to have it with me. So I'm just making sure that I don't want that yellowy wood glue look. So I'm using some sharp instruments just to kind of get in there, make sure that it's not going to be peeking out the sides. And I feel like maybe you're starting to feel like there are a lot of steps happening here. But remember, I am simultaneously working on 4 different projects. So rather than split them up into 4 individual projects, since so much of the work is similar, I'm showing you how I actually did it, which is to work on all 4 of them at one time versus a single one, then a single one, then a single one, then a single one. And so now I'm going to start stuffing the cans. I put just some paper in the bottom, and then I'm fitting up some of the styrofoam that you're going to put greenery into. And you can see I did a little bit of paint around the rim just in case you could see it. When all of this is done, you really can't, but it was a step that I felt like maybe I should do. And so I'm just going to trim up some styrofoam into some of these cans because we're going to be adding some faux greenery and dried greenery and some instruments. You'll see what I mean. And now I'm going to add a little bit of Excelsior to the white can that has the writing on it. And I'm going to adhere that with a little bit of hot glue to make sure that it stays nice and stuffed. And then I'm going to attach a little nest that I already happen to own. I have a bunch of these. This is some of the greenery that we sell on Wednesday nights and Thursday nights. So really cute. You can catch those on Whatnot as well. And here's what I meant by instruments. I have this old vintage screwdriver, and then I also have this other weird old tool, and I thought they would be perfect for what I need. I wanted to hang this little cat ornament from something up a little bit higher, and it ends up that those are perfect. So I'm just going to work on getting these into the cans using a little bit of hot glue gun and a lot of pressure. After giving it a good wiggle and letting that hot glue set a little bit, I am going to pull out the Excelsior again. And I actually want to put the nest on top of this, which is why this tool was so perfect. So I'm going to add the Excelsior, and then I'm going to add my little nest up top. And of course, after my nest is secured, then I need to add some more Excelsior to the base. Now, one mistake that I did make here is I forgot that this hot glue dries really hard. So I probably either should have waited on the Excelsior to glue it in, or I should have just put it in place and not hot glued it, because it did make the part of adding dried florals very tricky. And because I am multitasking here, I apparently forgot to document the part where I painted the frames with DIY paints White Swan. Went ahead and did around the whole thing. Now I'm using some 220 grit sandpaper and just giving everything a nice smooth sand. You see a little dust cloud that happens there. Don't try this at home, kids. No, really do. It's a lot of fun. But I do want to have a little bit of a rustic rough edges because that's how I style things. And now I am going to use some of Prima's wax. I'm using a little stick that we use to rub on transfers just because it's handy and it's gotten a little bit dried out over the years. I've had this for a long time. There are a lot of good waxes out there, and I do not think that it would make much of a difference, but you do want like a gilding wax. Dixie Belle has a great one. DIY Paint has a great one. Prima has great ones. You could also use the ones that come in the tube. I can't remember what they're called, but there's lots of good gold waxes for this. Now, I just kind of wanted to leave this part in because sometimes I use some very unusual instruments. In this case, I'm using some needle nose pliers. Sometimes I'll use the tips of scissors. Getting into very small places, sometimes it's just the easy way to go is to get something that's semi-pointy that you can shove into those little skinny areas because my fingers are neither pointy nor skinny. Finally, we're getting near done with one of the projects. So I have just grabbed a soft pink chiffon ribbon that I had. Again, these are kind of things that we sell on Thursday nights, DIY nights, on whatnot. And I am adding a little bit of hot glue, just doing a tight little bow there. And then I'm going to add the bird frame to it. I'm sorry, it's a little bit off camera. I can't really edit it in camera, but y'all get the idea. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot to tell you guys that we are going to be at Vintage Market Days in Mobile, Alabama, February 7th through 9th. I hope that you can make it. We're super excited and we're going to have all new displays and a lot of fun stuff there. So if you can make it to Mobile, be sure you do. Come say hi. Okay, so now I've got a bunch of dried lavender stems, which I've got to say smell really, really good. This makes this piece almost like an air freshener, at least until, they dry out even more. But in the meantime, I am just sort of plugging these into that foam base. Now, this is where I said I wish I hadn't added the hot glue because it did make it really difficult. But I'm just sort of trying to level the heights around the screwdriver, the vintage screwdriver that I have in the middle. And then I'm also going to add some little yellow flowers. Those are faux, but they look like they're dried. So I think that they added a nice touch. And I just sort of wanted this to have, a fun, whimsical garden feel. And look, just like that, we are finally to the finished projects. I would love to get your opinion on what you think about these. When you heard at the beginning that I was going to be doing 10 can upcycles, is this what you expected? Is it better? Is it worse? Have you seen other people doing projects like this? I know 10 can upcycling is a thing, but I think it's great that I managed to save these from going in the garbage can, and instead I'll be selling them at Vintage Market Days in Mobile, Alabama. Can't wait to hear your opinions. Let me know in the comments below. Uh-oh, I can't seem to find the footage of me finishing off this project, but I think you can probably figure it out. I just used some wood glue to attach the birdhouse to a spindle, and then did everything basically the same as every other way. I did include a couple little transfers on this, hiding in the back in case, you see it from the backside somewhere. Let me know what you think about this project. In last week's DIY video, I used the small buffalo on the watering pitcher, the silver painted watering pitcher, and I had this other buffalo left over on that sheet. And since so many people had comments about the buffalo and how excited they were to see the buffalo used, I thought I would go ahead and add this one to this tray. I love this saying by Emerson. And so those two projects, the watering can and this can, are off of one sheet of IOD transfers. So I do want you to see that these transfer packs can go a really long way in creating sellable items as well as just fun items for your home. And yes, because my way is the distressed way, more 220 grit sandpaper, just sort of roughen up the edges a little bit. I did leave the bottom of the tray unpainted as I did in last week's projects. And then I'm going to top coat this with some of the DIY flat. Again, the flat top coat. And I'm going to do at least 2 coats on it just to make sure that in case it really is used, that nothing can damage the tray. It will not be for food. I would not put food directly on it, but it will be easy to clean with 2 top coats. And ta-da! Look how much faster we got to the end of this project. I hope you enjoy it. This was sort of just a little add-on, mostly because I needed to get it done, but since a lot of you liked the buffalo, I thought I'd include it. And now the really hard part of this video. Today is Sunday, January 12th, 2024. And it is the funeral of Mark Douglas Paul, which is my sister's husband. He was a good man who lost his battle with cancer. They only had 7 years together, but they were 7 great years. And I'm going to lead you out with a song that he wrote and sang. And my sister's one wish was to have this song go viral. So do what you can to help. Links will be in the description below.
In your mind, it's all the same. Stuttering alone, feet in the flooding zone. Where's the lie who takes